borrowing £39 billion will force a rethink in Brussels. But EU leaders say things must be done in sequence. The problem with the Irish border, says Mr Barnier, can't be deferred to a date when the UK is no longer a member. So let's explore some of that with Anand Menon, Director of the UK in a Changing Europe. Nice to see you. You watched the speech, I know. What do you think the strategy is?
Well, this is obviously guesswork, but it strikes me there are three alternatives. The first is that the Prime Minister genuinely thinks that by a mixture of getting ready for no deal, talking tough, he can force the EU to move, he can get the max backstop removed, he can get the deal through Parliament. Either that, or he realises, which I think most people who know the EU suspect, which is they're not going to remove the backstop. And so he either thinks, I won't get a deal, but I'm going to show I've tried, and then I'll take us out of the EU with no deal. Or a tantalising third option, which is he's going to posture with the EU. He might go to Dublin, go to Berlin over August, come back to Parliament, say they wouldn't give in, we have to do no deal. And if Parliament tries to stop him, call an early general election on the back of saying, I've tried, Parliament is now stopping me, taking me out, give me a majority.
I got a tweet last night from somebody who said, you've got to explain to people the sequencing, because it was a row through the summer of 2017. When they first sat down to talk, the EU said what it was doing was in keeping with EU law, that so long as the UK was a member state, it couldn't negotiate a trade deal. You had to be a third-party member. So the question is there scope to go back to the EU and negotiate both at the same time, both the withdrawal agreement and the future arrangement?
The EU have said they're willing to talk about what's called a political declaration that spells out their ambitions for the future relationship. That much they've made very clear, and they'll do it now with Prime Minister Johnson if he wants. What they've also said is they won't open the withdrawal agreement under any circumstances, though of course the door is still open there. If the European Council, the heads of state and government, decide they want to revisit that, they can instruct the Commission to do so. So that's why I said he might go to national capitals. What the EU have also said is we won't talk about the next phase, which is our future relationship, until we've signed off on the past. And they give two reasons for that broadly. One is legal. We don't negotiate trade deals with a member state because it's against EU law to do that. The second is more political, which is we won't negotiate the future with you until you've signed off on the past. And you mentioned the 39 billion that's contained in the withdrawal agreement. There, what the European Union is very keen to stress is, from their perspective, 39 billion isn't a down payment for a trade deal. It is a payment of liabilities that we owe them. And so they will accept no linkage between the two.
OK, I want to come to another thing. I want to pick up something that Ian Duncan-Smith said today on BBC Radio. He is close to the Prime Minister. He was an advisor through the campaign. He mentioned that in the event of no deal, there were arrangements already in place. Have a listen.
Number one priority, which is what he's put Michael Gove in to do, get ready to leave. Full stop, deal or no deal. That's really important. There are already 17 mini deals available. There'll be more to do. They have to have an arrangement. 17
mini deals ready to go.
Well, they're not mini deals. They are 17 bits of planning the EU has put in place to help itself, not in negotiation or agreement with us. They will reserve the right to pull them when it suits them. They're not deals between us and them. They're arrangements they're making to cope with no deal if it comes to that.
OK. Jane?
Anand, you get the impression, listening to all this, that it's going to boil down to who blinks first. Who do you think is going to give way? Because somebody has to.
Well, the interesting thing is there are several sort of coterminous games of chicken going on at once. There's one between London and Brussels, and in that, the EU, I think, is making it clear at the moment it has no intention of removing the backstop. The Irish Prime Minister said the same on TV yesterday, I noticed. And bear in mind, they have politics in Ireland too. The Irish Prime Minister has carefully created a political consensus around the backstop, and he's very, very unwilling to try and unpick that. But the other game of chicken that's going on, if you like, is between Boris Johnson and his own MPs. You mentioned in introducing the earlier shot of Parliament that there was some unease on Conservative backbenchers amongst Remain-minded Conservative MPs about the direction of travel. They have a lot of thinking to do over some of those MPs, and essentially they have to decide what they like least: the prospect of making a Jeremy Corbyn government more likely, or the prospect of leaving the European Union with no deal. And that's a difficult choice for them to make.
Indeed.
It certainly is indeed. Anand Menon, thank you very much indeed.